A row that's been festering all week has taken another twist tonight. It began with that press conference from the First Minister after meeting the Chief Constable on Monday. Peter Robinson said the police must address a perception they're treating loyalists differently from Republicans. That prompted a written statement from the Chief Constable insisting police do take all decisions impartially. And to the SDLP, which raised its concern that the First Minister may have breached the ministerial code. Now tonight, a strongly worded statement from the First Minister insisting he will not be silenced. With me in the studio to try to make sense of it all, the DUP's Justice spokesman Paul Givan and the SDLP's policing spokesman Conal McDevitt. Thank you both for joining us on the programme tonight. Paul Givan, why has the First Minister chosen to issue such a strongly worded statement tonight?
I think it's in response to the hysteria that has surrounded his initial comments after he met the Chief Constable, most of which has actually been inaccurate reporting of what he did say, and he's setting the record straight. In the statement that he's released this evening, he does welcome the fact that the Lord Chief Justice Sir Declan Morgan and the Chief Constable Matt Baggott have now come out publicly to give some explanation as to the rationale behind the decisions that they take. That's a welcome development. That helps to explain to those, particularly within the loyalist community, who feel that they are being treated unfairly. They see Republican protests being policed by a helicopter with no police officers on the ground, and yet loyalist protests of late, most recently in Carrickfergus, had more police officers than protesters.
Your party colleague Jonathan Craig said on BBC Radio Ulster this evening he believes there is even-handed policing, but the perception is in the loyalist community that there isn't. Do you agree with Mr Craig that it is a matter of perception rather than fact?
Well, I agree with Peter Robinson and Jonathan Craig, who have both said that this is about addressing the perception that exists within the loyalist community. And that needs to be explained. It isn't good enough just for the Lord Chief Justice or Matt Baggott to explain it to politicians. They need to be explaining this issue publicly. And then people can be satisfied that actually decisions are being taken properly and correctly.
Yeah, but if it's a matter of perception, is it not the job of Unionist politicians to put those loyalists who are perhaps labouring under a misperception right? You have to tell them that it is a perception and they haven't got it right.
And we have been empowered by the statements that have been released by the Lord Chief Justice and Matt Baggott to be able to do that. And we give them a political way forward that has actually reduced the tensions, that has taken people off the streets, because we now have the forum, which is the vehicle for all of this to be dealt with. And ultimately, we don't want people on the streets. We need people to be airing their views through the political challenge. And politicians then can give representation to those views. Those that say we should be silent actually encourage people to take to the streets.
OK, well, we'll come on to that in just a moment or two, but I just want to discuss a few figures with you very briefly. We now know, because it's in the public domain today, that in the past 3 years, 3 loyalists have been convicted for participating in illegal parades. 147 Republicans have been convicted for the same offence over the same period of time. 3 loyalists, 147 Republicans, but you say there's a perception that loyalists are being discriminated against.
And that information will help to alleviate those concerns, but there have been over 200 people arrested as a result of the protests that had been taking place due to the ridiculous decision of the SDLP, Sinn Féin and the Alliance to remove the flag from the City Hall, which caused the street protests to take place. There are hundreds more individuals that are due to go through the courts as a result of those activities.
Right. Conal McDevitt, let's pick up on some of what Paul Givan said there. Peter Robinson says in his statement tonight, any suggestion that the First Minister should ignore rather than address such perceptions says more about you than it does about him. He's elected by the people to work on behalf of the people, and he says he will not be silenced.
Well, the First Minister should know better than to allow himself to become embroiled in a propaganda war being fuelled by anti-agreement elements within the loyalist community who are seeking to destabilise the political process. He should also know better than to try and usurp the position of the Policing Board, the sole accountability authority for policing in Northern Ireland. And he should know better than to, by his actions, give the perception that he is undermining the operational independence of the Chief Constable.
Is he not, as First Minister, allowed to comment on an issue which is a very big issue for every single citizen living in Northern Ireland?
He can comment, of course, but what he has done is go much beyond comment. In fact, his public statements after his meeting with the Chief Constable and tonight's statement make suggestions, in fact make allegations. Tonight's statement, for example, Mark, makes an allegation that one of the reasons there's a huge problem of confidence within the loyalist community is because of the activities of the Historic Inquiry Team. And he says, and in the statement, that the Historic Inquiry Team are biased, that they're only interested in pursuing loyalists. But again, like his original allegation around unnotified parades, the figures don't stack this up either. Let me just take a second to put those figures
Just do that
on the
quickly, and then
record.
we'll put those figures to Paul Givan.
If you take Operation Stafford out of the HET, and Operation Stafford's to do with the Mount Vernon UVF, if you take that out and you look at the troubles-related HET work, 39 files have been sent by the HET to the PSNI. 26 of them, 26 of the 39, relate to either INLA or IRA murders, and 13 relate to loyalist murders. So where is the suggestion that the HET is not pursuing Republican murders?
OK, but you very handily, from your perspective, leave out Operation Stafford, which obviously for loyalists is a significant thing that they don't want to leave out.
I'll tell you who's bothered about Operation Stafford. The UVF are bothered about Operation Stafford.
Well, loyalists are bothered.
And they've very good reason to be bothered about Operation Stafford, because the vast majority of Operation Stafford's work, Mark, relates to matters, crimes that went after the ceasefire.
OK, let's not get bogged down in discussion about the details of Operation Stafford. I was making a general point. Paul Givan, how do you respond to those figures from Conal McDevitt that the HET is anything but biased against loyalists?
Well, you make the point yourself. Conal's had to manipulate the figures to make his argument stack up. What is important is that the First Minister articulates the concerns that are being relayed from within the community.
He's articulating the concerns of the UVF.
The very same Conal McDevitt, who this time last year said that as a result of the police's rehiring of retired officers, that confidence within the nationalist community for policing had suffered as a result, and yet he criticises Peter Robinson for saying there is a perceived problem within the Unionist community.
There's a big difference between me and Jonathan Craig and Ian McRae and Robin Newton. We're members of the Policing Board, Mark. The Policing Board is the place, and they're the people who are tasked under the Good Friday Agreement. And I accept Paul doesn't support the Good Friday Agreement, but he's stuck with the Policing Board.
OK, but your comments, your intervention has ratcheted the whole thing up. I mean, accusing the First Minister of potentially breaking the ministerial code. It's not helpful to calming the situation down, is it?
I think the vast majority of us want to see Peter Robinson be First Minister for everyone in Northern Ireland. The vast majority of us want to support him and Martin McGuinness in making this region a success. But we are let down. We're let down as citizens, we're let down as fellow MLAs whenever he reduces his politics to the vested interest of a tiny minority of anti-agreement loyalists in East Belfast.
Well, see, Mark, it's the inconsistent argument that comes from the SDLP. They say that nationalist confidence was damaged as a result of rehiring. Then they engage a campaign to have Marion Price released from prison. So they're quite happy to get involved in interfering in due process on those issues. They supported motions. They supported the motion calling for Jerry McGeoch to be released from prison early. So they proactively have campaigned and sought to influence.
How do you respond to that? I mean, those are statements of fact. Sinn Féin's lobbied on the Pádraig Wilson case in early November. The SDLP has commented very publicly on both the Marion Price and Jerry McGeoch cases.
The SDLP, unfortunately, doesn't hold the position of First Minister. When you are First Minister, you hold the highest political office in the land. You have a duty to rise above tribal politics. You are meant to represent everyone. And Peter Robinson has spent the past week reducing his office to being a pseudo-spokesperson for a bunch of anti-agreement loyalists. There's no getting away from that. And not only that, he hasn't substantiated a single fact. His figures about parading have been blown out of the water. His figures about the HET have been blown out of the water. So what I would like, honestly, is for the First Minister to get back to his desk, to get back to putting the interests of Northern Ireland first, and to understand that we all make mistakes, and just accept that.
Let me just pick up on that point with you, Paul Givan. Isn't there a degree of, frankly, hypocrisy all round here, not least on the part of the DUP? When Sinn Féin members protested outside police headquarters at the arrest and charging of a party member, Lord Morrow, who's a DUP MLA, said Sinn Féin's Jerry Kelly must, and I quote, accept due process, must take its course and should not be interfered with politically. That's what he said about Sinn Féin. But it's OK for Peter Robinson to chip into the debate whenever it suits him.
But again, Mark, Peter Robinson has not interfered in any process. He has not asked the Chief Constable or the Lord Chief Justice to do something against what they wish to do. He has said they need to explain the decisions that they take so that people can understand why there is a differential in treatment towards loyalists and Republicans, where you have loyalists...
It's not really any different from what the SDLP did or what Jerry Kelly did.
And you have loyalists who had bail opposed, and then you had senior Republicans whose bail wasn't opposed. And what is interesting, that Conal McDevitt has jumped up and down today to criticise Peter Robinson, yet the Deputy First Minister, who is there to represent all of us, went to the parole commissioners on behalf of Marion Price, and yet not one word of criticism from the SDLP.
Okay, and very quickly, just a quick final word from you, Conal McDevitt. Your contribution has helped to make policing now a political football. No,
my contribution is about trying to defend what the people voted for on Good Friday '98, and that was an operationally independent new police service, and it was a single independent accountability authority in the policing board. And what I'm trying to do is to appeal to the First Minister to get back to work, to put our interests, our shared interests, at the top of his agenda, and to represent us all.
All right, we need to leave it there. Paul Givan and Conal McDevitt for now. Thank you both very much.